It's not something you can see. It's not something that you know ahead of time. One day it could just happen to anybody. And that's what happened with us. We noticed our grandmother was not being her usual self, and it was confirmed that she had Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's disease is one of the worst disease one can get because one loses one's self, if you will.
She's not the same person that she was. In a sense, I feel like my grandmother is more like an infant because we have to start all over. She's at a point now where she doesn't know how to feed herself. She doesn't know where her room is.
As a physician, it is heartbreaking for me to see patients suffering from a devastating disease like Alzheimer's, because not only this disease affects the patient, but also it takes a huge toll on their caregivers, and it places a huge financial burden as well as emotional burden on caregivers. They have to cut back on their working hours in order to be able to provide care for their loved ones, and sometimes they have to cut back on their own necessities like food, like medical care, in order to be able to continue providing care.
It's really sad to see the grandmother that used to hold you and tell you she loves you no longer say those things, and it's you saying that to her and helping her live her life because she no longer can do those things by herself. And I am the oldest grandchild of the family, so for me it affected me emotionally a lot. But with the years, I've learned to cope with it. But that's something I do want to inform others that aren't aware of about the disease, is that emotionally you will suffer. You'll see your loved ones no longer be who they were, and you will find yourself losing a lot of time that you could have had with your grandmother. We started noticing symptoms though when she was 60, 61.
Mm-hmm. How did you notice? What was different?
She was repeating herself often. She would ask the same question over and over. Little things like that, or she'll forget she was cooking something, almost like house caught on fire, but she's been really forgetful or anxious.
And have you ever tried any kind of medication to calm her down a little bit?
Yes, but she's a lot sleepier than normal.
Unfortunately, this is a disease that there's no treatment for it yet, and it's going to progressively worsen. So it's going to be very difficult for her as well as you guys are caregivers.
I've read that, the disease tends to skip a generation. What if I'm affected with such a disease? What if my siblings, who I'm really close to, have that disease? Or my cousins, anyone in my family? If we did, it would impact our families. And it's something that's not going to end unless we find a cure for that.
As Americans are living longer, and this is a disease that people face when they get older, we're going to have much increasing number of patients we're going to be facing in future as baby boomers get to 65 and over. What I'm hoping at this point is through research we'll be able to come up with the gold standard treatment for this patient. And we've heard a lot of news recently and hoping we're going to get there soon.
My hope for the future is that we find some sort of cure, treatment that would stop Alzheimer's from progressing.
We are hearing more and more about how many people will be afflicted. We're talking about millions and millions of people being afflicted with the disease in the years to come. It is clear an epidemic that will be affecting all of us in a way, not just elderly, not just people of my generation that coming up in age, but as a caretaker will affect everybody.
The drugs that are available now are symptomatic treatments. They elevate brain chemical known as acetylcholine, which is involved in memory function. And there's another drug called Amanda that prevents interference of these toxic chemicals that attribute to the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. So they're all classified as what we call symptomatic treatment.
And still, we don't have anything close to effective treatment of dementia, while we have a lot of promise of effective treatment of dementia. I am in a position that I can see the molecules that come out of the pharmaceutical pipelines very early. I see the data. I see the evolution of this field. I think we're very close.
We now have a very solid theory called the amyloid hypothesis. which gives us a great platform to develop drugs that targets the disease process. It turns out that there are toxic protein buildup in the brains of Alzheimer's disease. These plaques and tangles are known as amyloid and also tau proteins. What happens is they aggregate, clump, and block brain cells from communicating. What we're trying to do is to either prevent or clear these toxic proteins from the brain. Our approach to drug development is to come up with a preventative medicine taken at the onset of Alzheimer's disease, which will hopefully stop its progression.
The usual journey of clinical trials starts with chemists screening compounds for potential targets. So the academics, scientists, they have an idea that this particular targets can be engaged. Then the chemists, they design a drug or molecule that would fit the target. And then we go through exhaustive animal testing to prove that it would be safe. We consult with a lot of scientists, and we consult always with the regulatory agency, with the government, with FDA that looks at the safety package of the drug in animals and gives us or doesn't give us the go-ahead, the green light.
We have all the chemicals already introduced, approved by the FDA for research. So there are a number of drugs in clinical trials right now that requires further testing in evaluating safety and efficacy. What's holding us up in finishing our projects is a lack of patient participation.
We cannot ask for approval of the drug if it was not tested for efficacy. And the efficacy can be only tested in somebody with the disease. And that's why it's very sad to see the bed behind me empty. There should be a patient volunteer in this bed. We have the bed, we have the doctor, we have the money, we have the technology, we have everything we need for the study to be safe and of high quality, and we don't have the patient. And that's what the biggest hurdle in reaching for the treatment for Alzheimer's disease and other dementias.
We can't do it without their help. We really can't. We can sit here, we can pontificate about, oh, this is going to help memory because it's going to work on this part of the brain. But at the end of the day, I mean, it doesn't mean anything if we can't translate that into real people. And that's the missing piece.
How do you feel?
Well, in the beginning, I start feeling a little drowsiness, and which I can tolerate. But as the days advance,
The memory clinic, what we do is we go out into the community and we tell physicians and some of our other colleagues that we provide comprehensive memory evaluations for people who are experiencing changes in thinking in their everyday lives. And what they do is that they refer their patients to us because the physicians themselves aren't aware of what's happening in terms of, okay, is this normal aging? Is it not normal aging? And if it's not normal aging, what could it be? You know, is it a reversible condition? Or unfortunately, are we looking at something like Alzheimer's in the trajectory of it? Part of my goals for having the memory clinic was to sit down with potential participants one-on-one and offer them the service, and they would have no obligation to participate in research, because what I wanted to do was to use the memory clinic as a vehicle for education, to tell people, look, you know, these are the studies that we have right now, and this is what's involved, and this is where we really need your help, because we do have all the systems and the processes and the resources in place. We're just missing you.
This is a partnership between the pharmaceutical companies, researchers like us, and patients. Without these three parties being a partner, no new drug will be developed and approved. These are medications that we just don't make up in our company and give out to patients. These are medications that have typically gone through 5 to 7 years of safety testing by the pharmaceutical companies, and it has been approved by the FDA for research purposes.
And in some cases, I know of some families who've participated in trials because they've tried everything else and nothing's working. But again, it doesn't have to be that way. We could incorporate trials into our patients' everyday lives in a way that can make sure that we're not doing any harm and that they're actually helping us in terms of advancing our knowledge about the illness. When patients are with us and they allow us to go on that journey with them and we feel like we can do it together, that's rewarding for me. That's rewarding for me. And if we can find ways to improve quality of life for somebody who is new to the process, I think that's rewarding for me too.
We will provide PET scanning, which is the state-of-the-art imaging technique that will actually show whether there is amyloid, the toxic protein, embedded in your brain or not. That is a significant information that one can't usually get on one's own. So there's that benefit of getting that information.
Our unit is warm. The staff is warm, the nurses are caring. If you're going through something as sort of unfamiliar as trials, you need that kind of person who is going to be engaging and caring. Because I think that if you're going to sort of give your time and dedicate a certain number of days to help us come up with new treatments, what we do here very well is hopefully make you feel welcome.
I will tell you that we will put you in a comfortable environment, that we will give you a lot of attention, that none of your problems or issues will be left unattended, that there will be very experienced caring physicians available to you on a minute's notice.
We're actually in the midst of many trials. If everything goes according to our plans, we can have a drug that is disease-modifying or preventing Alzheimer's disease in the next 3 to 5 years.
Despite the fact that you have the beginning of dementia, there is a hope that the new medicine can be developed in time to still help you. I also will tell you to think about your children, because if you are developing dementia, they have the higher risk or higher chance of developing dementia.
Participating in clinical trials is the answer to helping us find a cure and progressing with research. I know my grandmother has had Alzheimer's for a while, but this could definitely help one of the grandchildren, one of us who might have Alzheimer's later on.
The family prevalence of dementia is very high. Some investigators talk about 60-70% prevalence in families. So people who consider participation in clinical trials, they should consider not just their own benefit, but the benefit people who they care and love.
I have somebody I'm thinking of now. She participates in our research trials. And if you ask her why she's doing it, she'll say that she's doing it for her kids. Doing something on this scale gives people, I think, a sense of confidence too, because it makes them feel like they're contributing to society in a different way.
Without them standing up and fighting, this fight will be lost.
We are in desperate need of patients to partake in these clinical trials to show whether these drugs actually work and submit this to the FDA so that the drug can be approved and be available to the doctors all around the world.
I think it's really important that people come forward and help each other, with participating in such a trial so that we can come together as a whole and find a cure.